Peace and Islam. Welcome unto the Amexem-Moor-Empire, Department for the Communications, Moor's Internet Televideo-Network, or M.I.T.N for short, which is a part of the Imperial Broadcast Agency. Today's date for the record is Freedom Day, the 5th of Karusima, in the year 301-629. I am the Noble, Tina Awad-Il, serving as the lead video broadcast agent, and I shall be your hostess for this broadcast segment. Today's topic is a brief breakdown of our 12 departments and sub-departments, so a synopsis, and that is segment 3 of the Amexem-Moor-Empire perspective. Tonight's guest of honor is His Imperial Majesty and Anu Bey, Islam. So welcome, Your Imperial Majesty.
Peace and Islam, Tina. Thank you for having me. So you want me to discuss with you, explain with you, the 12 departments of the Imperial Government with some of the sub-departments?
That's correct.
I'm happy to break that down for you. All right. Upon my completion of the Amexem-Moor-Empire Constitution, it took me 3 days to write it, and I spent an additional 7 Earth days working on it, aligning things up so that the numerology worked, taking a look at the mistakes that we made in previous generations to make sure we don't make them again. So I had to do a whole lot of spell checking to break those spells. And I did that. And the whole process took 10 Earth days. And once it was completed, I presented things before the Imperial Council. 60 Earth days to the day I completed what became my Constitution. It was in fact ratified. Now we have to function with those 12 departments, and initially 36 sub-departments. Within 90 Earth days, I expanded it out to 39 sub-departments. So, Department for the Law and Justice, responsible for not only the maintenance of order within the Amexem-Moor-Empire, also with having the responsibility of enforcing of contracts that we engage in internationally, enforcing of trade agreements and trade conventions internationally, also maintaining whatever treaties that we actually are looking to negotiate. This is the role of law and justice. Primary sub-department being ISA, the Imperial Special Services Agency. Some would call that in their venues a marshal service. Ours is, we refer to as ISA, Imperial Special Services Agency. So if someone is being held until they have the Imperial Court date, they would be in the custody of ISA. If a warrant has to be exercised, that would be done by ISA. Various works like that. If someone attempts to escape, that's all handled by ISA. All right. Department 2 is Imperial Affairs. Department for the Imperial Affairs is what we refer to around here as the eyes and ears of the Amexem-Moor-Empire. The day-to-day operations of the Amexem-Moor-Empire Imperial Government operations down to the local level are run through the ambassadorship, the Imperial Ambassadorship. And Imperial Affairs has a few sub-departments, one of them being Department for the Ambassadors. Ambassadors within the Amexem-Moor-Empire have dual roles, with the exception of Lieutenant Ambassador. Lieutenant Ambassador's equivalent in the foreign venue would be El Alcalde, or mayor to some. District Ambassador also serves as a district governor, Fari, if you would. And a regional governor, or Dendi Fari, would have 2 or 3 districts within their jurisdiction. Regional governor's response is to make sure that whatever is happening within their region is within the rigors of our Constitution and within the rigors of our fiscal budget laws, within the rigors of our Constitution. And they are responsible unto their sector governor or Sakimba Wantua, paramount leader of that particular sector. So effectively, the entire plant was broken into 9 sectors, and there are 9 sector governments. And the sector governments, their command authorities report directly to the national ambassador. They are answerable to the ambassador in charge, the sub-department head for Department for the Ambassadors, and they are answerable to the ambassador superintendent. So basically, the management team for our grand ambassador, who is legislative, is the national ambassador, the ambassador in charge, and the ambassador superintendent. Can you imagine being a district governor and you have 1,700 lieutenant ambassadors? So imagine if you're a regional governor, you may have double or even triple that. So we have to have a management team for the national ambassador. National ambassador effectively through the LARs, which is local activities report from lieutenant ambassadors, the DARs from district ambassadors, the RARs and the SARs. All these things get funneled through ambassador superintendent, ambassador in charge, up to the national ambassador. They will see trends happening across the planet, positive and negative. They will see how implementation of our operations are, what needs to be adjusted locally and why, and how. So the national ambassador will solicit the imperial government and say, on behalf of all the nationals, I'm soliciting the Imperial Council to put these things on the legislative agenda at the next Imperial Council meeting. And the Grand Ambassador, well, he votes, or she votes. And they and their colleagues would decide what shall be the law by way of their vote. So that's Imperial Affairs in a nutshell. Imperial Affairs covers a wide amount of ground. Things that get negotiated, what's decided to be negotiated, law and justice is involved in that decision. However, what actually gets negotiated is negotiated by ambassadors. That's going to be Imperial Affairs. If there are complaints, or if we're receiving a particular request for a trade convention, a trade agreement, or a treaty of some sort, that will come through Department for the Foreign Affairs, sub-department of Department for the Imperial Affairs. If we're sending out an imperial delegation on a SAIFA or non-expeditionary, a non-martial expeditionary engagement, Department for the Protocols is involved. They will find out from the host nation what are the etiquettes that are followed and inform them of what are the etiquettes from the imperial government to be followed regarding our staff. If we are receiving a delegation, it's vice versa. They will ask protocols, what are the etiquettes, the imperial etiquettes anyway. And that gets sorted out. Our interpreters are also assigned through Department for the Protocols. And then, of course, there is Department 3, Treasury and Budget. Department for the Treasury and Budget with the Fiscus Manager, responsible for the actions of the Master for the Vault, or also known as Master for the Treasury, Master for the Budget, and Master for the Mint. The 3 masters. One mints our money that we put into circulation empire-wide. The Master for the Budget makes sure that we keep all of our spending within the rigors of the fiscal budget law. So when Department for Logistics, a sub-department of Department for Joint Operations, puts in a requisition for particular equipment, materials, or supplies for a particular department or sub-department, Master for the Budget is the one who's receiving that request, has to approve it within the rigors of the fiscal budget law, and they will issue forth the order to the Master for the Vault, who will release the funds, and then Department for Logistics will make the order for whatever the equipment, materials, and supplies is, and it will be dispatched where it's supposed to be going. So the Imperial Stats, Weights, and Measures is Sub-Department of Treasury and Budget. Keeps our scales where they're supposed to be free and fair and not cheating, folks not being cheated because the scales are not calibrated properly. They also keep all of our records in terms of polling and things of that nature. And they work closely with Department number 4, which is Department for the Interior, because those records go over to Department for the Archives or Department for the Joint Operations, or in some cases both. Department for the Interior is our records, the Imperial Scribe, our head notary, all that goes through Department for the Interior. So if the Minister for the Interior doesn't have a record of it, it doesn't exist. So Interior, though, is the largest of our departments in terms of sub-departments. ESA, or Emergency Services Agency, which deals with fire suppression, which deals with hazmat, deals with emergency relief in aftermath of a disaster, natural or man-made. Department for the Copyright and Patent. If you're looking to establish a business, that goes to Imperial Power and Industry Agency. If you're designing a motor that has to be have its power rating established, that's done through Imperial Power and Industry Agency, and the like. So the endpoint for the civil net goes through the Imperial Library Service. I'm gonna cover that later when we get to Department of Communications, or I should. Maybe I won't for particular reasons. Well, we'll get to that. Now I'll make a decision when we get there. All right. Department number 5. Well, that's the heavy hitter. That's Department for the Customs. Our trade packages that we're looking to prepare and dispatch out, or if we're going to receive a trade package, that actually goes through Department for the Customs. Setting of sports ethics, business ethics goes through Imperial Power and Industry Agency. However, sports ethics goes through Customs. If you're looking to do particular things with stamps, if you're looking to do particular things regarding tear weights for shipping and things of this nature, they work closely with Joint Travel and Transport in that regard. However, Customs has to work very closely because they maintain our commerce. And the enforcement arm for the Department for the Customs is the Imperial Customs Force. ICF is half Marines, half what's so-called Coast Guard. So they have defense mechanism, and they are half sea law enforcement. They are effectively Homeland Security, if you would. Their jurisdiction starts from our littoral waters out. That's the basis of ICF. And they have the constitutional mandate to function from Article 5, Clause 2 of our Constitution, and their function is described as Article 4, Clause 2. Because Article 4, Clause 2 of our Constitution is all about free enterprise, which is anti-monopoly by default, and ICF is when it enforces that we don't have monopolies here, and they enforce free enterprise for all contracts within the rigors of our Constitution. That's the basis for Department for the Customs and that sub-department. Ah, yes, Department number 6. That's going to be Department for the Communications. Department that just a department is out of. Department for the Communications is hugely important, not only because it's how we get word out, it's also because Department for the Joint Operations, Joint Information Agency, excuse me, is a sub-department within Department for the Communications. It is the main one for us. All of the nationals go through Nationals Basic and Advanced Training. That is done through GIA, the Joint Information Agency, sub-department of Department for the Communications. A lot of our material for training is held through Law and Justice, Imperial Affairs, and Interior, and the backups for all of theirs is held by Communications. Obviously, the Imperial Broadcasting Agency is responsible for frequencies, certification and authorization and permits, and licenses for folks to be able to broadcast and stream, to make sure they're not pirating folks' copyrighted, trademark, or patented materials, not pirating someone else's frequency, and things of this nature. That is the duty, obligation, responsibility of the Imperial Broadcasting Agency. And to provide content through M.I.T.N, the Moore's Internet Televideo Network. Our anime, our cartoons, Mollywood, which is more wood, or whatever you want to call it, basically our films and our documentaries, and so on and so forth. M.I.T.N, MNN, More News Now. That's all part of responsibility of the Department of Communications, and a host of other things. Effectively, CivilNet, which is our version of the internet. Our internet is based upon shortwave radio. We don't use underwater cables, and we don't use SATCOM. No satellites involved, strictly shortwave radio. So CivilNet allows us to be able to give our kith and kindred, not just our nationals, an option. So if you don't want to use the foreign venues internet, don't want to use their Google and other apps, you won't have to. You can basically design them to operate within our CivilNet, as we call it. We have more than one. CivilNet, again, is obviously for the civilians. The Imperial government has a separate one. And for our protection purposes, we have a third. They operate on our encryption, and I'm not going to cover that. All right. Department 7 is general operations. They're tied with Interior in terms of size. That's the Imperial Learning Agency, Imperial Sanitation Services, Imperial Inspections, Infrastructure, things like this. Effectively making sure that our offspring learn, are able to take over when we sit down and retire, because they were properly instructed in a host of things. So effectively levels 1 through 14 for us in the foreign venue, they would call that pre-K through 12. Our offspring tend to be 2 to 3 Earth years or levels in front of them, if you would. Our offspring are required to become polyglots, like for them to speak at least 2 languages and at least 1, if not 2 dialects. For commerce and trade purposes, that is the reason as to why. So the official language of the Amexem-Moor-Empire is Mortabia, quote unquote, Arabic, and the official dialect is English dialect. So that's all I'm going to cover for general operations. All right. Now we move on to Department of Journey, Travel, and Transport. That's the big kahuna around these here parts. Because now the largest portion of our fiscal budget proposals and our fiscal budget laws, yeah, that's going to go to Journey, Travel, and Transport. JT&T has obviously everything tied back to ground, commercial ground, air travel, rail, sea, of course, regulation thereof. Also, ITO, the Imperial Transit Operations. Basically, ITO is responsible for all maglev, subway, and commuter rails. All functions by way of the Imperial Transit Operations, ITO for short. I won't go too far into that in terms of JT&T. It's obvious, so I'll leave that lie. We are big on getting back to sea as soon as I can raise the funds to pay for our first hull in the water. I'll say that, and I'll leave it from there. All right, so from Journey, Travel, and Transport, we now press on to Department for the Land Management. Land Management has agriculture and Imperial Seismic Anomaly Observation Agency. We monitor all earthquakes, all volcanoes across the planet, and all seismic events. Also, obviously, agriculture is huge for us because we cover, if you would, food operations, herbs and spices that we use to heal with. Also, one of the modes that we use for propulsion, we don't put all our eggs in one basket, as some would say. So we can grow all three components that's needed to grow biodiesel fuel on our own terms. So agriculture doesn't just grow food, it grows our healing methods. It also grows our ability to produce biodiesel fuel and biomass for other generation of power. So as you go through these various departments, you can see how they interact and how important they are as they flow with each other. Again, starting out, law and justice, very important. Imperial affairs, very important. Treasury and budget, very important. Interior, very important. Customs, very important. JT&T, very important. General operations, very important. Communication is very important. Land management, very important. Health and file therapy, hugely important. You can't do the rest of that if you don't have your health taken care of. So the Department for Health and File Therapy is a massive department in and of itself. Our health minister is awesome. PhD in sports medicine and also in acupuncture. He spent time abroad studying in herbs. He was influenced, like I was, by Dr. Leela Africa and Jewel Pookrum. And he's massive. He's got skills. So if it's bacterial, chemical, fungal, or viral, be it acute or chronic, we do solve it. And we have a non-surgical universal healthcare plan that runs through the Department for Health and File Therapy. And we've had it for almost 20 Earth years. So I'm very grateful for what we have in our abilities. I will hold my comments there for that. The primary sub-department for that is more than one. However, the primary is IDERA, Imperial Disease Eradication Emergency Response Agency. We're not looking to control diseases, we're going to eradicate them. So words have power. We work to eradicate any threat that comes to us by way of anything bacterial, chemical, fungal, viral, or anything that would cause dis-ease in the body. So that is the primary mission of IDERA. Come in, identify a situation, determine if it's a hot zone, quarantine that particular area, and bring in the herbs that we need, the essential oils, spices, whatever it is that we need, the barks, the roots, whatever it is that we need to shut it down, and we lock it down and eliminate the threat. That's who we are and how we proceed at our core. And then, of course, we have to protect all that. That will be Department for the Defense and Security, DefSec. We almost never talk about that, and I'm gonna leave that lie. So that's the best way I can actually answer what you've asked me to speak on. Do you have any follow-on questions, or do you have any questions that you'd like me to answer for you?
Islam. I believe suffice for this segment, and I appreciate you taking the time and answering my questions. So on behalf of the Morse Internet Televideo Network, the audience, myself, we thank you and for your time and for taking the time to answer the questions. Islam.
Islam, my good pleasure, Tina. Islam.
Islam. Islam, my audience. For more information about the Amexem-Moor-Empire, Imperial Government and Operations, contact is available through our website, which is modernmoormonarchy.squarespace.com. That is modernmoormonarchy.squarespace.com. I want to take this moment and opportunity to thank you all. We appreciate any feedback, comments, concern, and you're encouraged to visit the website and have a look. With that in mind, we appreciate you for your time. Until next time, on behalf of His Imperial Majesty and all of my fellow Amexem-Moor-Empire nationals all across the planet. Peace, great health, and prosperity upon all of you and all of us. Peace and Islam.